Debates will continue, but the field is set for the college football playoff, and Notre Dame is not one of the 12 teams in the bracket. Miami jumped the Fighting Irish to take the last at-large berth, giving the ACC a bid after speculation they would be left out entirely. Chris Budden spoke with Canes head coach Mario Cristobal.
It's an awesome feeling. Obviously, we came here, now this is 4 years ago, to make moments like that a reality for our players first and foremost, and for our university, the program. So, yeah, it's a great feeling, but you turn your attention quickly to the task at hand.
We have talked a lot about the head-to-head, and in a week where neither you or Notre Dame played, how shocked were you that that was what finally came into play today?
I wasn't shocked, and I'll say this, I felt all along that we were presenting information while others were presenting a case, or somehow just creating a narrative to try to take shots at the fact. So we weren't shocked, but we're glad that the criteria was abided by, because at the end of the day, the truth always comes out.
And now the calendar switches. What does the next couple of days look like for you guys and the players as you get set for Texas A&M?
Well, we've been lifting, running, working on technique and fundamentals since we got back from Pittsburgh, and we gave them a day and a half off. So we're back tomorrow. That was the schedule to begin with anyways. And we'll meet at 9 in the morning, get back to lifting, running, Texas A&M, walkthroughs, get right at it again.
Well, congratulations. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
As for Notre Dame, Jen Latta has more on that school's reaction to missing the playoff.
Utter disbelief, shock, and sadness. Those are the overwhelming emotions here in South Bend as Notre Dame finds itself on the outside looking in, the first team out of the college football playoff. Head coach Marcus Freeman talked to his team immediately afterward. Usually he has answers and explanations. In this case, he has none. He says it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up why his team is on the outside looking in. I talked to athletic director Pete Bivacqua, who echoed saying this team won, and won convincingly. They were led to believe that they were in, only to have the rug pulled out from under them. And then he added, no disrespect to any of the other teams in the field, they're just frustrated by the process, saying that any rankings ahead of the final rankings each season are a, quote, farce and total waste of time.
So tell us how you really feel.
Well, the college football playoff bracket has been released, and the big news, of course, Miami getting into the CFP field over Notre Dame. Going into this week, some controversy there, a lot of gnashing of teeth and what have you, but some really great matchups coming up here starting December 19th with Alabama at Oklahoma in a regular season rematch from just a few weeks ago. Joining me now is Hunter Yurachek, the chairman of the CFP Selection Committee, to discuss everything that went on in going into this process. First off, Hunter, the big question, of course, why the decision after last week to move Miami over Notre Dame?
Yeah, that really centered around what we did with BYU following the big championship game against Texas Tech. At the second time they had played Texas Tech in the last 4 weeks. Same result. BYU looked the same. They were physically dominated on both sides of the ball, and we decided as a committee that Miami deserved to be ranked ahead of BYU. In doing so, then you moved Miami to 11, then was Notre Dame at 10. And then you had that direct head-to-head comparison between those two teams. And as you look at the resumes of both Miami and Notre Dame, they're almost identical. Schedule strength, record strength, common opponents, results against common opponents, how they look statistically on the offense and defensive side of the ball. And then where you had to lean on, of course, is the head-to-head matchup between those two teams Labor Day weekend, with Miami being the winner of that. And that was the deciding factor in placing Miami over Notre Dame.
Going back to last week, why wasn't Miami over Notre Dame last week if obviously no results had really changed between the two?
Because we had felt as a committee that Notre Dame deserved to be ahead of BYU, and BYU deserved to be ahead of Miami. Thus, Notre Dame deserved to be ahead of Miami because they were ahead of BYU. And there was not. We compared those two teams head to head. Is just one of the tools in our toolbox, one of the data points that we use. And because of BYU being sandwiched in between them, there was not enough to move Miami ahead of both BYU and Notre Dame.
Yeah, I was wondering, every conference championship loser this past week ended up actually dropping in the rankings except for Alabama. So why did Alabama, after losing by 3 touchdowns and the rush offense being held to just 1 yard, get the benefit of the fact there of not being able to drop in the rankings while everybody else did?
That's a great question. And so Alabama was playing Georgia for the second time. Alabama had gone to Georgia earlier in the season, beaten Georgia at Georgia by 3 points, arguably the best win in college football this year. Ohio State lost a head-to-head matchup, the first one against Indiana, so it's naturally to drop them from 1 to 2. And then BYU, again, lost for a second time to Texas Tech in a very similar manner, where they did not look great on either side of the ball. Texas Tech really dominated them physically, dominated both of those games.
You know, as you know, I don't know if you know yet, but Notre Dame has decided to just completely opt out of the bowl season now. They've declined a bowl invitation as a result of missing out on the college football playoff. And their athletics director, Pete Bavacqua, actually even told Yahoo Sports, quote, "Any rankings or show prior to this last one is an absolute joke and a waste of time. Why put these young student athletes through these false emotions just to pull the rug out from underneath them? Having not played a game in 2 weeks, and then a group of people in a room shatter their dreams without explanation. We feel like the playoff was stolen from our student athletes." With so much noise coming out of South Bend, and obviously something we've never seen before with a team missing the playoff and opting to not even play in the postseason, what's your reaction to the athletics director and, for that matter, the entire university there in their decision?
I think for the reason that Pete outlined there, and I have a lot of respect for Pete, and he's a wonderful athletic director, is why we stayed up as a committee into the early morning hours, almost 3 o'clock in the morning, and came back at sunrise and continued to debate Alabama versus Miami versus Notre Dame. What we knew as a committee, based on how the championship games played out, that we had 3 deserving teams, but only 2 spots for those 3 deserving teams. Someone was going to feel just like Notre Dame felt as the results came out, whether that be Notre Dame, Miami, or Alabama. And unfortunately, it was Notre Dame. And I feel for those young men on that campus, but I was going to feel for young men, and as was our entire committee, on one of those 3 campuses this morning as the rankings were released.
You know, there's been a lot of chatter over the last year or two about just the idea of why release rankings at all the way up until the final week of the season. I think there's 5 release shows, for example. I know that the NCAA's president, Charlie Baker, who obviously is not involved with the CFPs, even questioned why that's the situation when the NCAA basketball tournament doesn't do so. It obviously puts you guys in a situation where you're going to be criticized no matter what, but then the thought process, as we get the transparency with this, is questioned even more. After going through this now as the chairman, is there anything you would like to see tweaked with how you guys release these rankings every week?
There's a few things I'd like to see tweaked, but I'm going to reserve those and let Rich Clark deliver those to the management committee, because as the chair of the selection committee, I'm following the guidelines that we have been provided by the management committee, and some of the tweaks that may need to be made are going to have to be made with the management committee in conjunction with their television partners at ESPN, and that's not the role of the selection committee. I have my opinions, but it's not my job as a chair of the selection committee to publicly deliver those opinions. That's for Rich Clark, the executive director of the CFP, to take forward to the management committee.
You know, as an athletics director, when we saw the introduction of new metrics this season, and that was propelled quite a bit by SEC athletic directors like yourself, strength of schedule, strength of record. How much did that help or hinder, or whatever you want to term it, the selection process this year?
I think it was a huge piece of the puzzle, especially where Alabama was concerned. Their schedule strength by our CFP metrics was the top of any teams ranked in the top 11. They had wins again at Georgia, against Vanderbilt, and previously ranked Tennessee and Missouri, and they had a really tough schedule, and that showed up in their strength of schedule and their record strength as we evaluated them head to head against Miami and against Notre Dame.
Thank you, Hunter Yurachek. Congratulations, by the way, on your new hire for football coach there at the University of Arkansas. The college football playoff bracket, you see it right now, starts December 19th with Alabama and Oklahoma, two SEC teams, facing off in a rematch from the regular season, but this time in Norman, Oklahoma, and Indiana, of course, the number one seed sitting there waiting for that winner. Number one, undefeated as a result of knocking off Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. We can't wait.
As a team, we've decided to withdraw our name from consideration for a bowl game following the 2025 season. This comes after Notre Dame was left out of the college football playoff. The Irish were the first team out after falling behind Miami for the first time in any of this year's playoff rankings. Reaction instantly with Bryant McFadden here as the Fighting Irish will not appear in a bowl game, and their season has come to a close here short of the college football playoff. We knew the road ahead, what was required of them, rattling off those 10 wins after a slow start, those 2 losses to what are playoff teams. But to take your name out of bowl consideration, is that fair or foul, or is that just the day and age we're living in?
It's fair because you can do it. This is a new landscape in college football when it comes to postseason play. When you look at the current playoff seeding and how it's orchestrated, how it's structured, you know, if you're Notre Dame and you're not in the top 12, you felt like you got hosed. Because to Joe's point, every revealing the committee did leading up to today's information had Notre Dame in the top 12. So if you're Notre Dame, how are you left out of the top 12 when you didn't play one ball game? And you had other teams who are now in the top 12 who also didn't play a game either.
You could say it even like this. You had 2 teams sitting on the couch yesterday due to the ACC tiebreaker rules, Miami and Notre Dame, neither playing football on Conference Championship Saturday. So no results to add to those names, and still you get the pair.
And to your point with Miami and Notre Dame, of course, these 2 teams were tied to the hips over the last few weeks in terms of the reveals. But if you're Notre Dame, you were in front of Miami every playoff revealing show. You were in front of Miami. And to Joe's point, both teams were sitting on the couch watching football like us as fans, and now Miami is in front of you. So seeing this statement, this is the new landscape of college football because it's all about playoffs. When you're in the playoffs, you have an opportunity to do what? Compete for a championship. If you're not, you're not. It's almost like postseason play. Bowl games are now like the NIT of college football. Everyone wants to be a part of March Madness. If you're not a part of March Madness, you'd rather just sit on the couch and get ready for next season because you're competing for something that is meaningless. Because the ultimate goal is to do what? Especially if you had a shot. It would be one thing I highly doubt Coach Freeman and his staff in the university would decline a bowl invite if they didn't have a shot to get into the playoffs. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, they had 4 losses, 3 losses, or 5 losses, where they knew their playoff hopes were gone. Now we're getting ready for a bowl. But we've been straddling the fence the entire process since they started to reveal these playoff spots. And we were in the mix. And now all of a sudden, we didn't do anything that warranted us being outside, but we outside now? No, that's and I wouldn't be surprised to see other teams do this as we continue to move forward.
And I'm not sitting here to say that Notre Dame belonged in over Miami, but that is the precedent that the committee set, situating them there throughout those rankings. And you make a great point that in adding intrigue to one thing, the college football playoff, we have removed intrigue from the other, those being the other bowl games. Notre Dame maybe sending a message and taking their name out of the hat here for bowl season.